Believing in Jesus kind of ruins it, you know? While we could once live in ignorance about what was the right way to live, we could pretty much do anything we wanted to do without any sense of guilt or remorse about the things that we did. We were seemingly happy in our pursuit of nothingness. It was the ignorant bliss of living an empty life. Living that life is like a child who chooses to play in the mud in some back alley because he's never experienced what it's like to build sandcastles by the ocean. We lived in ignorance about the kind of life that we could have in God because we just didn't know any better. But now, once you take it on, once you make that commitment, once you take that step to live in Jesus, all of a sudden, you become enlightened. You know what's right and what's wrong. You know the way God wants you to live. And so now, if you choose to go back to doing the things that you did before, you're not ignorant anymore, which means you can't really enjoy it, because now you know it's the wrong thing to do. It's not any fun anymore, because you can see just how empty and meaningless that life really is. The book of Proverbs says this: as a dog returns to its vomit, so is the fool who returns to his empty life. It's pretty clear there. The Apostle Peter put it a little more gently like this: if we have escaped the corruption of the world by knowing Jesus, and then again have become entangled in it, we are now worse off in the end than we were in the beginning. Well, good morning, y'all. We are continuing in our series entitled Living All Out. As we've been going verse by verse through the New Testament book of Romans, chapter 12, that we believe was written by the Apostle Paul, as a way to try to inspire us to rise up and live differently. And so today, it's understanding what it means to live passionately. I think the Bible acknowledges in several places there is this tension that exists in us that I talked about a few minutes ago, where we try so hard to live in both worlds, and we so desperately want to have a meaningful faith in Jesus, and yet deep down we really don't want to give up the stuff of this world either, because it's so comfortable for us. It's really all that we've known all of our lives. And so when it comes down to it, we're not really experiencing the kind of satisfying life that we've been promised as followers of Jesus. And we're not really feeling the presence of God. We're not experiencing the kind of abundant life that Jesus so boldly promises for all of those who will follow him and give their lives to him. And so I guess the question is, what does it take then to have that kind of satisfying, fulfilling life where we can move past our feelings of emptiness and start living and claiming this abundant life, this Makarios life, as Jesus put it in the Beatitudes, that we've been promised. And I think that's exactly what Paul is taking on in chapter 12, verses 11 through 13, and it says this: do not be slothful in zeal, be fervent in your spirituality, serve the Lord wholeheartedly. Rejoice in hope, be patient in hard times, be constant in prayer, contribute to the needs of other Christians who are also maybe experiencing hard times, and seek to always show hospitality. Now, there's a lot there in these verses, and there's a lot of great stuff here, but for this morning's purposes, we're going to focus in on just a few phrases from verse 11. Where the Apostle Paul begins by saying, do not be slothful in zeal. Also translated, Do not be lazy in the way that we live. And I can tell you this, I don't want to live slothfully. Like, that's something that when I think about my life, I don't want to go there. Now, I love the little sloth creatures. I think they're really cool, beautiful little creatures. In fact, I was able to see one out in the wild a couple years ago in Nicaragua. It was really cool. But here's a little sloth trivia for you, all right? The sloth trivia is, did you know that sloths move so slowly that algae actually grows on their furs like it grows on rocks or trees? I mean, it's crazy, isn't it? That's how slow it is. Like, algae just begins to grow there. But the upside is that the green on their fur helps them to blend in with their surrounding and provides them cover. That's just a crazy looking thing, isn't it? I mean, it's just nuts. So when we are lazy about the way that we live, the algae of this culture begins to grow on us. The world that we know, we begin to blend right in because the norm is that for us that we go through life kind of mindlessly, slowly, with no zeal, no passion. We just fall prey to the busyness of nothingness. And I think that's the real threat, right? I mean, that's the real threat to our lives, to the relevancy of our lives, that we would somehow live our lives checked out, never really giving much thought to what we want our life to really be about, that we just react every day to whatever the daily grind throws our way, instead of being proactive in the way that we grab hold of the life that we want. And I think that most of us, if you look around this room, I would say that most of us are very sincere in our desire to live for God. I mean, that's why we're all here this morning, right? When we talk about wanting to change our lives, or that we want our lives to be all about God, I believe that's truly what we want when we say it. But whether we like it or not, there is a disconnect between who we really are and who we want to be. Because for most of us, there is no passion. There is no intentionality, no sense of mission in the way that we're living out our lives. We are slothful in our zeal for God. And slowly this culture creeps in and takes over who we are, and it just zaps our sense of direction and meaning. And I think what happens is that we try this Jesus thing out for a while, thinking that it's going to be a quick fix for everything that's wrong in my life. But after a while, you can't help it. It just starts feeling like work. And we eventually, slowly stop the pursuit of the passion that we have for Jesus, and we stop doing our part, and we now expect that God should pick up the slack somehow. That we can go and sip Mai Tais on the beach, and God should be doing the work here, making me feel His presence, making me feel His peace, His closeness, if that's what He wants for me. He should miraculously somehow make that happen, when all the while we have become completely disengaged from our spiritual life because we have nothing invested in it. We are doing nada to improve our spirituality. And when we have nothing invested in something, truth is, we stop giving a care. And when that happens, we become slothful in zeal. We lose our passion. And we live out our days with no sense of purpose or intentionality. And so it's obvious to me that what Paul is saying in these verses is that you can't experience a meaningful relationship with God without being fully invested in that relationship. And so then he takes and he contrasts this idea of being slothful in our zeal to saying what living all out looks like, which is to be fervent in our spirituality. If you go back to the Greek text that the New Testament was written in, that word fervent in the Greek has an idea to show great zeal. But the cool thing about it is that word has the idea that you're so passionate about something, you're so heated up for something, that you become almost so hot to the point of boiling over, is the metaphor that this word uses. So Paul is saying that in order to have that kind of abundant life that the Bible promises us, we have to live our lives with such a passion that the heat we have for our spirituality is so strong that it just boils over and spills out into every aspect of our lives. There's only one other place in the Bible that uses this root Greek word that I'm aware of, and it has this same idea, and it's the place where Jesus is really kind of setting straight the church of Laodicea in the book of Revelation. And in Revelation chapter 3, Jesus says, I know your deeds, that you are neither cold or hot. I wish you were either one or the other. So because you are lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I am about to spit you out of my mouth. Those are some pretty harsh words from Jesus. I mean, he's basically saying, okay, you don't want to live for me. I get that. At least I know where you stand. If your desire is to live for me in such fervency that you are red hot in your relationship with me, then it would spill over from every aspect of your life, which is what I expect from you. But this middle thing, this wishy-washy, lukewarm faith thing, this is ridiculous. I never know who you are or what you stand for, so I'm about to spit that lukewarm nonsense out of my mouth. At the core of every ambition, every drive that we have in this life, is that you become so affected by something that it radically impacts you. You begin to pursue that something with such a passion that it consumes every part of your life. And so, if you don't have a passion for your faith, then your faith will not drive you in your life. The decisions that you make and the turns that you take, your faith will fall flat. And if you don't invest in your faith will not be there for you when times get tough. Jesus uses a great metaphor of what passion should look like in our lives. And in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 13, it says, the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field. And when a man found it, he hid it again, and then in his joy went and sold all that he had and bought that field. I'll put it in my own words. Jesus says, it's like this guy who was out working in somebody else's field. And as he's digging in the dirt, he hits something. And so he begins to scrape away the dirt until he can see that it's a box. And so he bends down and he digs it up. And when he opens it up, he sees that this box is filled with more jewels and gold than he could have possibly ever dreamed of. He didn't know much, but he knew one thing. He had to have that treasure. And so he runs home to his wife. And he says, baby, we're putting the house on the market. Have a garage sale on Saturday. Sell everything we own. We're going to buy that field I've been working in. And she said, honey, that old field ain't worth that much. Why do you want that old raggedy piece of land? He said, trust me. You'll see soon enough. I say, trust me to my wife. She goes, yeah, right. Friends and family heard he was selling everything to buy this field, thought he'd gone crazy. Everybody's making fun of him. It didn't matter because he had to have it. That's all he thought about. It consumed him. And when he finally sold everything that he had, he ran straight to the owner, offered him a ridiculous amount of money for that field, and he bought it on the spot. And the first thing he did was to go out and dig up that box. And when he opened that chest up full of great treasure, everyone was amazed, and no one thought him a fool again. That, Jesus says, is what having a passion for the kingdom of heaven is like. It has the idea of taking what you have in your life, that which you already possess, and you're trading it up for something that has greater value. If your house and your car and all the stuff that you have in the bank account, it's all worth 500 grand, and you go out and you dig up that treasure and you buy it for $1 million, that's a good trade, right? No brainer. But what if you can't quantify the value of what it is that you're trading everything for? I mean, what kind of monetary value do you put on the kingdom of heaven? What's that worth? Is it still worth giving up everything you have for it? Jesus is clearly saying, in my understanding, that following God is not something that we do out of any sense of guilt or obligation. It's something that we desire so much that we will stop at nothing and we will give up anything to have it. What can you say when you just stop and you're just quiet for a moment? You kind of run through your head, what is it that you have that kind of passion for? Something so great that you're willing to sacrifice everything just to have it. What is it for you? When you finally understand what that is, it's all you can think about. And you can't stop from wanting to pursue it, wanting to get it. And so here's where people may start looking at you funny, because you are truly living counter to this culture, because everyone else is thinking that what you're chasing is just a foolish pipe dream. It's a fantasy. This Christianity thing. The word passion basically means to be so affected by something that it changes the very core of who you are. It changes the way that you live every day. In his book, Care of the Soul, Thomas More said that passion is the essential energy of the soul. It's what drives us. It's what fuels us. What is it that you believe that you have such a strong passion for? What is the one thing that drives you in the decisions that you make? In that which you pursue in your life? The last phrase in verse 11, he then says, serve the Lord wholeheartedly with everything in your being. When you think about your spirituality, are you fervent in your faith to the point of boiling over about it? Or is your spirituality getting a little lukewarmish? Where do you want to be in your relationship with God? And what are you prepared to do in your life? The changes to make, the adjustments to make in order to get it? Can you honestly say that you're serving God wholeheartedly and are living all out in God? Most of us can't. And the problem is that we will never, ever find a true, sustainable joy in our life until we take on that faith in God with such a passion. Because otherwise it'll be like we talked about in the beginning, where Jesus just ruins it. You're not happy in either world. You're not happy in the world that you used to be in because you know it's wrong. You're not happy in the Jesus world because you're not fully in. Where do you fit? What's that life look like in the tweener? How do we find a faith that moves us from a Sunday morning experience to a faith that is life-changing? I always suggest that in any time that we're feeling stuck in our faith or we're feeling like we're not growing, to just disrupt where we're at. And we've talked about this before, but I feel like what thrusts us into growth spiritually is when we take steps that take us out of our comfort zone. And, one of the greatest ways to get outside of your comfort zone is to join a small group. And we have small groups starting all the time. You could talk to Wally, but it's a little intimidating to sit in a group of people at first, trying to get to know them and believing that these people may be more spiritual than you are, but the truth is they're not. The truth is what small groups are about is having this group of people who are just like you. Same struggles, same temptations, same issues that you have. And it's the whole idea that we can learn and grow and walk together. You have people in your corner to support you. There's also just a lot of places where you can begin to serve if you're not serving, from serving the homeless to the stuff we do with Huff Elementary to serving coffee in the cafe to changing diapers in the nursery. There's a lot of opportunities. And also, I think just on a personal level, in the quietness to do, what Lance suggested last week is to really just take on reading the Bible best you can. Sometimes there'll be stuff you don't understand. It doesn't matter. Just keep plowing through it. He suggested the Gospel of Mark, which is a great place to start. Whatever it is for you, I think we just have to disrupt where we're at and continue to just shake the algae off of our back, so to speak, so that we are forced to always become something new in Jesus, to grow and to strive and to thrive and to pursue our passion for God. And I really do think that the whole thing comes down to just developing a passion for God, where our faith becomes more than just a Sunday morning thing or a quick prayer before dinner thing. It's building a faith that is sustainable, a faith that is strong enough to carry us through when times get tough. I don't have the secret to keeping a passion for God in your life. I struggle with it myself. But I do know this. Jesus makes it very clear over and over and over again with every teaching that he makes that he wants to be that one thing in our lives that drives everything else that we do and say in our lives. And when that happens, your life will become a life of passion that goes way beyond anything you could have ever imagined. The people around you may think you're crazy, but you know what's real. You know what kind of treasure is buried out in that field. You know what you're invested in, and that's something that will last beyond the realms of this world. Through my 52 years of living, I've learned a thing or two about traveling the narrow dirt path that leads to Jesus. The main lesson I've learned is that it's not easy, but it's quite easy to lose your way. But I've also learned that no matter how hard, how difficult, how challenging is the Christian life, if we stay the course, if we continue painstakingly to follow Jesus with a passion to the very end, we will not be disappointed. That we will find ourselves living a life with a sense of purpose and passion. And it is then we will find the abundant life that we've been looking for. And to me, there is no better life.